Hi everyone. Hope you're doing well. I just wanted to talk to you for a little bit about the discomfort that some of us may be feeling. And I know for myself that the discomfort that I've been feeling over the last couple of weeks, I never really identified with what it was. And what I mean is, I've been struggling with thoughts, with my feelings, my emotions, my thought life, all different kinds of things, and been up and down in just how to navigate through this discomfort and not really identifying with what it was until the other day. I was trying to articulate to a friend what I was struggling with, and she says, what I believe that you're struggling with is with grief. And it's interesting to know something intellectually or to even have taught on grief, but to experience it can be an entirely different thing than to know it in theory. And she sent me this interesting article on grief. And in grief, there's different different parts of it that you have to navigate through. Part of the 5 stages they call of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and acceptance. But the interesting thing about grief and going through grief is that they don't happen necessarily in that sequence, and you can experience all of those different aspects of grief in one day, in a short period of time. You could go through denial, and you could experience sadness and anger the next moment, and whatever. And these are the types of things that I've been going through the last few weeks, and I didn't know what it was. And it's freeing to now know that what I'm going through and what maybe others are going through, and this is why I'm wanting to share this, because I don't believe that I'm in this alone, and I'm wanting to speak hope into this and help us identify that the loss that we're going through with this COVID-19 virus, and us having to socially distance ourselves and social and just going through the season of isolation and being cut off from having real community like we've come accustomed and have expected to experience in our lives. We can experience grief. And I want to speak into a couple things. I want to speak first into how society leads us in how we're to deal with grief. Society's way of looking at grief and how we're to process grief is so wrong in so many different for so many different reasons. One of the prevalent things in regards to grieving is that we're told simply not to grieve. We're called to bury our feelings, and we're to replace whatever loss that we're experiencing with something else, and that's not the way in which we're supposed to navigate through grief and loss. We're not supposed to self-medicate. We're not supposed to replace our feelings with some other feeling. We're supposed to stand in our feelings. We're supposed to allow ourselves to go through these processes with God, trusting God is going to heal us and deliver us from grief. Society tells us that we're to grieve alone, which is not God's heart and will for people. We're supposed to grieve in community. And in grieving in community in today's world right now looks entirely different. But part of me reaching out to you in this way is hoping that we can grieve together in community, and that we can use platforms like FaceTime and Zoom and Instagram and YouTube and these different means in which we can connect with one another and actually see each other's faces. Society says that time will heal all wounds. We're called to live with regret, never trust again. These are all parts of society's way of helping us grieve. And to be quite honest, they're garbage. They're not the way in which we're to grieve. And when we're meant to partner with Jesus in allowing him, the great physician, to help heal us of grieving, and Holy Spirit, he's the great comforter, and he can bring comfort to us in times of our grieving. God says, like, stand in your feelings. Feel your feelings, people. Like, I know for myself, and this is something that I've been practicing over the last several years, but it certainly wasn't a part of my life. Like, I would do anything, really, and some things were harmful and destructive to replace feelings. But now to stand in one's feelings is freeing in itself, and it's an empowering thing to know that it's okay to feel what I'm feeling, and to know that God stands with me in it, and to know that others, my brothers and sisters, stand with me in it too, that we partner in this, and that I'm not going to stuff it, that I'm not going to bury it, that I'm not going to deny it, that I'm not going to discount it, that I'm not going to put on the false image of bravery, which I think I've been guilty of over the last couple of weeks, is trying to be brave in times where I haven't felt anything but brave, when I've been weepy, when I've been crying, when I've been emotional, when I've been angry, when I've been in times of denial or bargaining, all of these plethora of things that come with grief. I have to admit that I haven't navigated through it well, because first and foremost, I didn't know it was grief that I was going through, and I don't want to replace me standing in grief and experiencing grief with something else or someone else. I want Jesus to become my true treasure in all of this, and that he will help you and I navigate through these seasons of grief. It's really dangerous to put something or someone in the central place where Christ should be in our lives. And if that someone or something that was the treasure of our life, and maybe part of the treasure is just having ongoing connection with people, and it's God's will that we have connection with people, and that we meet with one another, and we hug one another, and we handshake one another, and we have these face-to-face conversations with one another. But it's troublesome and can be problematic if that is our treasure, and where Jesus is meant to be our treasure. Because when we go through experiences of loss, which manifests then itself in grief, that anguish can become unbelievable when that treasure, if it's not Jesus, gets ripped out of our lives, and our lives begin to cave in. And these things stand to reason that when we lose a treasure or perceived treasure in our life, if it's not Jesus, our lives feel like we can plummet into hopelessness and despair and all kinds of things that are far more deep and dangerous than just grief in itself. So I encourage you, friends, to instead make Christ your treasure, that he begins and will change our whole perspective of how we can navigate through grief and loss. We will take some hits and we will experience some losses, but we can stand and say, it is well with my soul because Jesus is the treasure of my life. I'm putting him first and foremost in this season and beyond. Like, if Jesus has not become our treasure now, up until this point, this is certainly a season that I felt like God has positioned the church and the world to put Christ as their treasure, and will give us hope, will offer us healing, will help us not conform to the patterns of this world and rely on society's solutions to grief, but allowing the love of the Father to touch our lives and impact us, to allowing the saving work of Jesus to manifest itself in our hearts and in our lives, to allowing Holy Spirit to cause a redemptive and regenerative work in us, so that our hearts and minds are transformed by his presence in us and on us, and in just simply in our circumstances and situations in which we find ourselves. So if you're experiencing grief and you never knew what it was, that of the reasons why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, I encourage you to press into Jesus. Embrace what it is that you're going through, and allowing him to reveal himself to you in greater measure through this unique opportunity that we're going through. And I pray that God bless you. I pray that he keeps you, that his face shines upon you, that his power, protection, and provision will prevail in your lives. God bless, and take care.